Before we begin, take a moment to settle yourself somewhere comfortable. Let your shoulders soften, let the day loosen its grip, and allow your attention to drift just enough that you don't need to hold on tightly to every word. This is a story told at the pace of starlight, meant for quiet hours, for late nights and early mornings, for moments when the mind is ready to wander and wonder, and it's perfectly all right if you drift off along the way. Most days, the sun is easy to forget. It rises, it sets, it warms our skin, lights our rooms, pulls shadows slowly across the ground, and then it disappears again, leaving us to the familiar comfort of night. We build our lives around its rhythm so completely that the star itself fades into the background, becoming less a presence and more a constant, like gravity or breath, something so reliable that we rarely pause to notice it at all. And yet, 93 million miles away, the sun is never still. It turns slowly, patiently, like a great wheel of light, its surface in constant motion, boiling and flowing in ways that are almost impossible to imagine. Vast rivers of glowing plasma rise and sink, brighter than anything on Earth has ever known, carrying energy that has travelled outward from the core for thousands of years just to reach the surface. From this distance, that restless activity smooths itself into a calm golden disk, steady enough that it feels permanent. But sometimes the surface tells a quieter story. Sometimes dark marks appear. They don't arrive with drama. There is no flash, no sound, no moment you would feel if you were standing beneath the sky. A small shadow simply forms, a place where the sun looks slightly less bright than the surrounding light. To the untrained eye, it might look like a blemish, a flaw, or even an illusion caused by glare. To those who watch the sun carefully, it is a sign that something deeper is happening beneath the glow. These dark regions are called sunspots, though the name makes them sound far smaller and gentler than they truly are. They are not spots in the way dust rests on glass. They are windows into the sun's inner tension, places where invisible forces press upward, interrupting the smooth flow of heat and light. They appear darker only by comparison, cooler than their surroundings, though still hotter than any fire humanity has ever built. For centuries, people have watched these marks come and go. Ancient astronomers recorded them without fully knowing what they were, tracking their movement across the solar face as the sun slowly rotated. Early scientists debated whether they were clouds, planets passing in front of the sun, or imperfections in the eye itself. Over time, with patience and better tools, their true nature began to reveal itself, not as surface stains, but as signs of immense energy held just below the visible light. Still, most sunspots are unremarkable in the long story of the sun. They appear, they grow modestly, they drift across the solar disk, and then they fade, dissolving back into brightness as if they had never been there at all. A quiet cycle, repeating itself again and again over the years, following rhythms so familiar that even scientists sometimes glance at them and move on. But every so often one refuses to remain ordinary. It begins as a small shadow, barely worth mentioning, and then it lingers, it darkens, it spreads. Not quickly enough to feel alarming, but steadily enough to be noticed. The sun does not announce this change, it does not warn anyone, it simply continues turning, carrying this growing mark along with it, as though nothing unusual were happening. From Earth, the sun still looks the same, the days still warm, the light still falls through windows and across streets. Life goes on, unaware that anything has shifted at all. And that is often how the most important changes begin, quietly, without interruption, without urgency, unfolding far from where we are looking. There is something deeply human about that. We're used to noticing change only when it becomes unavoidable, when it crosses a threshold we can no longer ignore. We rarely catch the moment when a balance first begins to tip. We miss the early signs, not because we are careless, but because stillness feels safer than motion, and constancy feels comforting. The sun understands this rhythm well. It has been shining for billions of years, long before there were eyes to watch it or minds to wonder what it might be doing. It has burned through ages of calm and ages of turmoil, through quiet stretches and violent ones, all without preference, all with the same steady patience. What feels unusual to us is simply part of its long unfolding nature. And yet, for those who watch closely, certain patterns stand out. A sunspot that grows larger than expected, one that develops structure instead of fading, one that seems to gather complexity rather than release it. These are not moments of panic, they are moments of attention, a subtle invitation to pause, to look again, to acknowledge that beneath the sun's familiar glow, powerful processes are always at work. This is not a story about catastrophe, at least not yet. It is a story about noticing, about recognizing that even the most constant things in our lives are dynamic, layered, and occasionally unpredictable. It is about the quiet tension between calm appearance and restless interior, a tension that exists not only in stars but in oceans, in weather, and in ourselves. As this chapter draws to a close, let your thoughts rest on that image, the sun turning slowly in silence, carrying a dark mark across its face, neither hiding it nor emphasizing it, simply allowing it to exist as part of the whole. There is no need to rush ahead, no need to anticipate what comes next. The sun is patient, and so is this story. In the next chapter, we'll begin to look more closely at that shadow, at how it formed, and at why this particular mark refused to stay small. But for now, it's enough to know that something subtle has appeared, and that sometimes the quiet beginnings are the most important ones of all. The shadow we noticed before does not rush. It moves the way stone weathers or water carves a shoreline, slowly enough that the change only becomes clear when you pause and look again. One day it is little more than a dark freckle against the sun's brilliance, easy to overlook, easy to dismiss. The next, it has edges, texture, a sense of weight, as though it belongs there more firmly than the light around it. As the sun continues its patient rotation, carrying that mark across its visible face, those who watch begin to realize that this one is not behaving like the rest. Most sunspots bloom briefly and fade, releasing their tension in small, quiet ways before dissolving back into the glow. This one does not. It gathers itself. It deepens. It spreads outward, not violently, not dramatically, but with a steady insistence that invites attention rather than alarm. Growth on the sun is a strange thing to imagine. Here on Earth, growth feels tangible. We watch plants stretch upward, children change year by year, cities expand across land that was once empty. Solar growth happens on scales that resist intuition, across distances so vast that even a small change can encompass more space than our entire planet. And yet, the sun does not hurry. Its processes unfold according to forces older than memory, shaped by balances that have held for billions of years. This particular dark region begins to reveal structure. It is no longer a single patch, but a complex landscape of shadow and texture, a place where the surface looks uneven, as though something beneath it is pressing upward with quiet determination. Around it, the surrounding light bends subtly, responding to forces that cannot be seen but can be felt, like water flowing around a submerged stone. Nothing about this feels sudden. That is what makes it so compelling. The sun is not flaring or flashing yet, not announcing change in a way that would demand urgency. Instead, it is doing what it often does best, allowing tension to build invisibly, storing energy the way mountains store pressure along a fault line, or the way clouds gather weight before a storm that has not yet decided whether it will rain. For those who follow these patterns, this kind of growth carries meaning, not because it guarantees anything, but because it narrows possibilities. A sunspot that remains small can pass unnoticed, its influence limited, its story brief. A sunspot that grows, that organizes itself into something larger and more intricate, suggests that deeper forces are at work, shaping and reshaping the magnetic currents that thread through the sun's surface like unseen roots. Magnetism is patient. It does not move quickly, but it does not forget either. It stretches, twists, and folds over time, responding to the slow rotation of the sun and the restless motion beneath the surface. Where it gathers, it creates regions of quiet restraint, places where energy is held rather than released, where the sun's usual flow is gently interrupted. This growing dark region is one of those places. It is a pause in the sun's brightness, a moment of stillness within motion, and as it expands, it becomes harder to ignore. Not because it looks threatening, but because it looks deliberate, as though the sun itself has chosen to mark this spot and return to it again and again. There is a familiar feeling in that, something deeply resonant. We recognise it in our own lives when a thought returns uninvited, when a worry lingers longer than expected, when a question refuses to be answered quickly. At first, we barely notice it. Then, over time, it grows more defined, more present, until it asks us to pay attention, not urgently, but persistently. The sun is asking nothing, of course. It does not communicate intention, only behaviour. But behaviour, observed patiently, can tell a story. And the story this growing mark tells is one of accumulation rather than release, of complexity rather than simplicity. It suggests that beneath the surface, forces are intertwining, layering themselves, becoming more entangled with each slow turn of the star. As days pass, the region continues its journey across the sun's face, carried along by rotation that never speeds up or slows down to match our concern. It grows not in a single direction, but outward and inward at the same time, deepening its centre while broadening its reach, like a tide that pulls both ways. From Earth, nothing feels different. The sky remains familiar. The warmth of daylight does not change. Time moves forward at its usual pace. And yet, far beyond our awareness, the sun is quietly rearranging itself, allowing a small shadow to become something more substantial, something that now commands a second look from those who know where to look. It is important to remember that growth alone does not mean danger. It means potential. It means stored energy. It means a system that has not yet decided how it will resolve the tension it carries. The sun has countless ways of balancing itself, many of them gentle, many of them unseen. Most of the time, these imbalances pass without consequence, dissolving back into equilibrium as quietly as they formed. But sometimes they do not. Sometimes the forces beneath the surface continue to tighten, weaving themselves into patterns that are strong, resilient, and difficult to unwind. And when that happens, the sun does not act quickly. It waits, it turns, it holds its shape and its silence, allowing the pressure to speak only through subtle signs. This growing sunspot is one of those signs, a darkening presence, patient and persistent, moving steadily toward the centre of the sun's visible face, where its influence will be felt most clearly. There is no need to anticipate what comes next, no reason to brace or prepare. For now, it is enough to observe the growth itself, the way something small became something noticeable without ever breaking the calm. In the next chapter, we will begin to look beneath the surface of this darkened region, into the invisible lines of force that give it shape and strength, and into the quiet tension that gathers where light appears to falter. But for now, let the image settle, the slow rotation, the spreading shadow, and the patience of a star that has all the time in the universe to decide what it will do next. What gives that shadow its shape is not darkness at all, but tension. Beneath the sun's glowing surface, beyond what light alone can reveal, invisible lines of force are constantly being drawn, stretched, and folded back upon themselves. They move the way currents move in deep water, slow and powerful, guided by rules that do not need to announce themselves to be obeyed. This is the quiet architecture of the sun, a framework built not of stone or metal, but of magnetism. It helps to imagine the sun not as a smooth sphere, but as a living body in motion. Its outer layers do not turn as one. Near the equator, the surface moves more quickly. Nearer the poles, it lags behind. This difference is subtle, but over time it matters because magnetism remembers motion. As the sun turns, those invisible lines are dragged along, twisted gently at first, then more tightly, like threads wound around a slowly rotating spindle. Most of the time, these threads slide past one another without conflict. They stretch, relax, and release their energy in small, quiet ways, barely disturbing the surface. But in certain regions, like the growing shadow we've been following, those lines begin to tangle. They press together, crossing paths, folding inward instead of spreading out. The result is a kind of magnetic knot, a place where the sun's internal motion meets resistance. This is why the surface darkens there. The magnetic tension rising from below acts like a dam, interrupting the normal flow of heat. Hot plasma that would otherwise rise and brighten the surface is held back, forced to detour around a region that has become stiff with invisible pressure. Compared to the surrounding brilliance, it appears dark, not because it lacks energy, but because it is holding too much of a different kind. As the sunspot grows, this hidden complexity grows with it. What began as a simple interruption becomes layered, textured, full of internal structure. Magnetic lines no longer lie neatly side by side. They loop, twist, and crowd together, their paths no longer clear or predictable. From a distance, this looks like a quiet mark on the sun's face. Up close, it is anything but quiet. There is a stillness to it that feels deceptive. Like a lake before dawn, its surface calm while unseen currents shift below, gathering strength, waiting for some change in balance. The sun does not rush to resolve this tension. It allows it to exist, to deepen, to test the limits of what can be held without release. This is where patience becomes part of the story. The sun has no urgency, no preference for calm or chaos. It simply follows the path of physics, letting forces play out over time. A tangled magnetic region may persist for days, weeks, sometimes longer, growing more complex as the sun continues to turn, each rotation adding another subtle twist to the knot. From Earth, this is almost impossible to feel. We are too far away, too grounded in our own timescales. Hours and days mean something to us. To the sun, they are fleeting, barely worth noting. What matters is accumulation, the slow layering of tension, the way repeated motion can turn something flexible into something rigid. And rigidity in a system built on flow carries consequences. But those consequences are not inevitable. Many magnetic tangles loosen quietly, unwinding without fanfare, dispersing their energy in gentle adjustments that never rise to our notice. The sun is exceptionally good at finding balance, at smoothing its own rough edges without incident. What makes this region feel different is not that it is tangled, but that it remains so. Rotation after rotation, the lines stay pressed together. New strands emerge from below, adding themselves to the existing knot rather than dissolving it. The structure becomes denser, more intricate, like roots thickening beneath the soil, unseen but unmistakably present. There is a human familiarity in that image. We know what it is like to carry tension quietly, to hold conflicting forces within ourselves without outward sign. Thoughts we do not resolve, pressures we postpone, emotions we layer one atop another, trusting that time will smooth them out. Often it does. Sometimes it does not. The sun offers no judgment on this process. It simply demonstrates it, on a scale that humbles us, reminding us that even the most luminous things carry darkness where energy is held too tightly. This darkness is not a flaw. It is a feature, a sign that powerful forces are at work, shaping outcomes long before they are visible. As the sunspot continues its slow journey across the sun's face, the magnetic knot beneath it grows more defined. Its edges sharpen, its interior becomes more complex, and still nothing dramatic happens. No flash, no sudden change, just the steady presence of tension, coiled and waiting, like stone under pressure deep within the earth, or water paused behind a dam whose strength has not yet been tested. If your thoughts begin to drift here, that's all right. This is a chapter meant to be felt more than followed, a reminder that much of the universe operates quietly, beneath surfaces we take for granted. You do not need to hold every detail. The essence is simple and slow. Invisible forces shape visible forms, and patience is part of their nature. In the next chapter, we will begin to explore what happens when tension finds a way to speak, when the sun releases what it has been holding, not all at once, but in pulses of light and silence that ripple outward through space. But for now, let the image rest. The tangled lines, the darkened surface, and the quiet power of a star that has learned to wait. There comes a moment when held tension finds a voice. Not loudly, not all at once, but in brief releases that ripple outward from the place where pressure has been patiently gathering. On the sun, these moments do not look like explosions in the way we imagine them. There is no fireball rolling through space, no sound to mark the release. Instead, there is light, sudden and intense, pouring outward from the tangled region we have been following. Light that carries information faster than anything else in the universe. This is how the sun speaks when it finally exhales. The magnetic lines beneath the darkened surface, twisted and pressed together for days, sometimes weeks, reach a point where they can no longer hold their shape. They slip, reconnect, and rearrange themselves in an instant that is both violent and precise. Energy that had been stored quietly is converted into motion and radiation, released not as heat alone, but as a surge of brightness that spreads across space. From the sun's perspective, this is a natural adjustment, a rebalancing, a correction. One configuration gives way to another, and the star continues on as it always has. But that light, travelling at the speed of light itself, does not stay near the sun for long. In just over 8 minutes, it reaches Earth, brushing past satellites, slipping through the space between worlds, and touching the upper layers of our atmosphere. When it arrives, it does not announce itself to most of us. There is no sensation, no warmth beyond the familiar, no visible change in the sky. And yet something subtle happens overhead. High above the clouds, where air thins into near vacuum, the incoming energy stirs the upper atmosphere, changing the way it behaves, changing the way it interacts with signals we send through it every day without thinking. Radio waves, usually so reliable, begin to falter. They're absorbed rather than reflected, scattered rather than guided, as the charged particles in the upper atmosphere respond to the sudden flood of solar energy. For a while, communication that depends on those layers simply fades, as though silence has been gently laid over part of the planet. This silence is not global. It appears only on the side of Earth facing the sun at that moment, drifting with the turning planet as it always does. Over oceans and remote regions, over flight paths and shipping lanes, radios go quiet. Messages do not bounce back. Voices reach outward and find no return. Most people never notice. Phones still work. Lights remain on. Daily life continues uninterrupted, unaware that for a short time, a different kind of darkness has passed overhead. One not of night, but of altered space. This is the curious nature of solar influence. It can be vast and precise at the same time, touching specific systems while leaving others unchanged. To the sun, this release is modest, a brief flicker compared to the total energy it emits every second, barely a blink in its long existence. But to us, it is a reminder that the quiet tension we observed earlier does not remain silent forever. It finds expression, not in chaos, but in pulses, each one reshaping the invisible environment around our planet. These moments tend to come in clusters. When a magnetic region is deeply tangled, one release does not always resolve the strain. Instead, it loosens part of the knot, shifting stress elsewhere, setting the stage for another adjustment. The sun settles, then stirs again, like stone cracking gradually under pressure, each soundless fracture easing one strain while creating another. There is a rhythm to it. Light surges outward, the atmosphere responds, communication falters briefly, and then calm returns. The pattern repeats, not predictably, but not randomly either. It follows the slow logic of physics, of forces finding balance through motion rather than rest. If this feels distant, abstract, that is because it happens far above our awareness, but it mirrors processes we know well. Conversations where words finally spill out after long silence, storms that release heat built up over days, emotional weight that finds relief not in one grand moment, but in a series of small necessary breaths. The sun does not build toward drama. It does not aim for climax. It simply responds when tension crosses a threshold, releasing what must be released, then returning to stillness until the balance shifts again. Each pulse of light is both an ending and a beginning, closing one configuration and opening another. As the sunspot continues its passage across the sun's face, these quiet outbursts remind us that stored energy rarely remains hidden forever. Even when the surface looks calm, even when darkness seems contained, the forces beneath are always in motion, always negotiating with one another. The sun's patience does not mean inaction. It means trust in process, confidence that time and physics will find a way forward. If your attention drifts here, let it. This chapter is not meant to hold you tightly, but to carry you gently, like a slow tide. You do not need to track every cause and effect. It is enough to feel the idea of release, of tension easing through light, of silence spreading briefly before sound returns. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention backward, to moments long before this one, when the sun spoke in much louder ways, leaving marks not only in the sky, but in human memory. But for now, rest with the image of light crossing space, touching Earth softly, and reminding us that even distant stars can reach us without ever raising their voice. Long before this quiet moment, long before radios, satellites, or even written memory, the sun had already taught this lesson. It has always spoken in cycles, not in singular events, and when it releases what it has been holding, it often leaves traces not only in the sky, but in the stories people tell afterward. These traces linger like sediment at the bottom of a river, subtle, easy to overlook, yet impossible to erase once you know they are there. There was a time when humanity lived much closer to the sky, not closer in distance, but in attention. The rising and setting of the sun shaped days not symbolically but literally. Light meant safety, warmth, and work. Darkness meant rest, vulnerability, and waiting. When the sun behaved differently, when its light arrived strangely or lingered too long in unfamiliar colours, people noticed. They always have. On rare occasions, the sun's quiet adjustments were not quiet at all. Light spilled across the night sky where it did not belong, washing darkness in slow-moving curtains of colour. Reds and greens drifted far from their usual homes near the poles, reaching places where night was meant to remain dark and still. People stepped outside, confused and hushed, watching the heavens glow as though dawn had lost its way. These moments were not understood in terms of magnetism or charged particles. They were understood as signs, as messages, as reminders that the sky was alive and capable of change. Some saw beauty, others felt unease. Most simply watched, storing the memory away like a stone picked up on a long walk, heavy enough to remember, but not heavy enough to carry forever. In one such moment, the sun released more than light. Invisible currents reached down into the world of wires and metal at a time when humanity had only just begun to lace the planet with long strands of connection. Simple systems, fragile by today's standards, responded in unexpected ways. Sparks leapt where they should not have. Instruments behaved as though touched by unseen hands. Communication continued even after power was removed, as if the sky itself had briefly taken over the task. Those who witnessed it did not panic. They described what they saw, compared notes, and then moved on because life demanded it. The sun returned to its usual rhythm. The skies darkened again. The world, as far as anyone could tell, settled back into place. But the memory remained. It rested quietly in records and recollections, waiting for a time when it would make sense in a different way. When humanity's relationship with the sun changed, not emotionally but structurally, when the invisible threads connecting people to one another multiplied, thickened and stretched across continents. Now we live inside those threads. Electricity flows through our days the way blood flows through a body, unseen but essential. Signals move constantly through the air above us, carrying voices, images, instructions, and comfort. We are rarely aware of how much depends on the quiet cooperation between earth and sky, because that cooperation is usually effortless. But the sun has not changed. It still turns, it still tangles its magnetic lines, it still releases energy when tension demands it. What has changed is how closely our world listens, whether we intend to or not. This is why old stories matter. Not as warnings, not as predictions, but as context. They remind us that what feels unprecedented is often simply rare, that the sun has always been capable of touching Earth in ways that feel intimate and disruptive at the same time. They remind us that patience is not the same as safety, and that calm does not mean static. The growing sunspot we've been following fits into this longer rhythm. It is not an anomaly in isolation, but part of a pattern that stretches backward through time, connecting quiet observations to luminous nights remembered for generations. The sun does not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes, offering variations on familiar themes shaped by the moment and the conditions below. There is comfort in knowing this, not because it removes uncertainty, but because it places it within a larger story. The sun is not acting out of character, it is being itself, responding to internal forces with the same patience and inevitability it always has. If your thoughts drift here, let them wander gently. Imagine those earlier skies, unfamiliar colours moving slowly overhead, people standing in silence, unsure but attentive. Imagine the same sun turning then as it turns now, carrying its tension, releasing it when it must, and continuing on without pause or regret. In the next chapter, we will return to the present moment, to the world as it exists now, threaded with technology and expectation, and consider what it means to live beneath a star whose quiet patience does not always align with our need for certainty. But for now, rest with the idea that history does not shout its lessons. It whispers them, softly, waiting for those moments when we are finally quiet enough to hear. By the time we reach this final quiet moment, the sun has not changed its pace. It is still turning, still holding its light the way it always has, still allowing tension to gather and loosen according to rules far older than memory. What has shifted, gently and almost without notice, is our position within the story. We have moved from watching a shadow form, to sensing the forces beneath it, to remembering how often this dance has unfolded before. Now we arrive not at an answer, but at a pause. And pauses matter. They are the spaces where understanding settles without effort, where the mind no longer needs to chase conclusions. The sun offers no certainty here, no clear signal of what will happen next or when. It simply continues, patient and unhurried, reminding us that uncertainty is not a failure of knowledge, but a natural state of living beneath the dynamic sky. Above us, the atmosphere continues its quiet work. It bends light, carries signals, absorbs energy, and releases it again, adapting moment by moment to influences we rarely feel directly. Most nights, nothing unusual happens. The systems we rely on hum along, uninterrupted, wrapped in layers of assumption and trust. This is not fragility. It is collaboration, a delicate balance that works because it is flexible. The sun understands flexibility. It does not cling to a single form or outcome. When tension builds, it holds it. When release is necessary, it allows it. Between those moments, there is long stillness, long stretches where nothing demands attention, where change happens too slowly to register. This is not suspense. It is simply time doing what time does best. There is comfort in that rhythm if we let ourselves feel it. Not the comfort of control, but the comfort of belonging to a system larger than any single moment. We are not separate from the sun's story. We are participants in it, shaped by its light, warmed by its presence, sheltered by the invisible fields that surround our planet like a quiet promise. Even now, as you listen, the sun is busy elsewhere. Magnetic lines are shifting, plasma is flowing, energy is moving outward, not with intention, but with inevitability. Somewhere tension is gathering, somewhere else it is easing. None of this requires vigilance from us. It unfolds whether we watch or not. And that is perhaps the most reassuring truth of all. The universe does not wait for our attention to function. It does not demand that we stay awake or alert to every change. It continues, steady and patient, allowing us the freedom to rest, to drift, to step back from the need to understand everything all at once. If your thoughts feel heavy now, let them sink. Imagine stone resting at the bottom of water, unmoving, held gently by pressure rather than force. Imagine darkness not as absence but as space, a place where light is simply waiting its turn. Imagine patience not as delay, but as trust in process. The sun does not hurry its endings. It does not mark chapters or close loops neatly. It allows stories to overlap, to blur at the edges, to continue quietly even when no one is listening. In that way, this ending is not really an ending at all, but a soft place to stop paying attention. You do not need to stay with the sun now. It will still be there when you wake, turning as it always has, carrying its light across the same familiar path. The shadows will shift. The tension will change. The story will continue with or without witnesses. For now, it is enough to rest beneath it. Let the idea of that distant star settle into the background of your thoughts, steady and untroubled. Let the day dissolve. Let the night do its quiet work. And if sleep comes, welcome it gently, knowing that the sun, patient and constant, will be waiting when morning finds you again. And now, as the story settles, there is nothing left to explain. The sun continues its slow turning, just as it did before we began, carrying its light across space with quiet confidence. The shadows we followed will keep drifting, the tensions will rise and fall, and the vast mechanisms of the universe will continue their patient work whether we watch them or not. That is the quiet comfort of it all. Nothing here demands urgency. Nothing asks you to stay alert. The cosmos does not require witnesses to exist, and it does not hurry its conclusions. It allows space for rest, for uncertainty, for silence, and for sleep. If your thoughts feel lighter now, let them be. If they feel distant, that's all right too. Stories like this are not meant to be held tightly. They are meant to pass through you like starlight through thin clouds, leaving behind only a sense of calm curiosity and gentle wonder. Whatever you remember when morning comes is enough. And if you find yourself returning here again someday, know that this place will still be waiting. Quiet stories, slow science, a universe that doesn't rush you. If this journey brought you a moment of peace, or helped you unwind at the end of a long day, you can support this space simply by staying connected. Liking, sharing, or subscribing helps these calm stories reach others who might need them too, drifting through their own quiet hours beneath the same sky. But for now, there is nothing more you need to do. Let the night finish what the story began. Let the darkness feel soft instead of empty. Let sleep arrive without effort. Good night.